cool. So it's gonna be a busy summer. We've got the World Cup this summer. And something we're going to be talking about on this video. On previous ones, we've been talking a lot about session planning, session development. But today's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be similar, but it's going to be more focused on the business side. You've previously mentioned on videos that you ran a coaching business throughout the summer. So this video is going to be really helpful for coaches that are based in the UK, because it's going to give them a little insight into how to get clients, how to grow the business, how to develop a good program. So first of all, before we get into it, Phil, tell us a little bit about what you did, what you were running, and tell us a little bit of an insight into your coaching business that you had.
Yeah, it started sort of randomly. So at the time, I was coaching at a club called SH Football Academy,
Yeah.
and working at Pro Football Academy as well. So I had sort of two coaching jobs part time going on. And then over the summer, obviously the football season ends in the UK at around May, end of May time, depending on how you get in the cup competitions and stuff.
Yeah.
So it was a case of sort of June, July, and August, that sort of 3 month block where there's not really much going on in terms of the coaching scene. You might have a month or two of pre-season, but it's not as much in terms of the training time. There's obviously no league games. You'll have a couple tournaments and friendlies and stuff, but it was the sort of off season. So, and I used to do one-to-one coaching before when I sort of first started back in Southampton when I was first coaching. And I had a very small group of players back then. I think I was working with like a total of 5 players.
Yeah.
That I was coaching over there, and I did that for a couple of years before I obviously then moved to London. And in London, I never really did it. Mainly, I was always sort of busy, and I couldn't plan things, get the right logistics, and we'll talk about that more in this sort of video. Both the sort of coaching and, like you say, the business and logistical side of things of running a business. But then last summer, sort of the main reason why is I wanted to work individually with a lot of my players that I was coaching in the team.
Yeah.
So because I had them at that point for 3.5 seasons, I identified very well the areas where a majority of my team stayed. So I knew where they needed to improve. I knew the things that they're already really good at, and I wanted to work with them on a more individual basis. That's sort of how it started. Is I basically had a chat with our club owner Simon, and this is probably the first business bit that I'll give. The first little tip is your connections and the people that you know can really help you. In terms of growing a client base, a player base. So, and I don't think it would have worked in this exact way with any other club. In the sense that, so I basically had that chat with Simon, and I said that I want to work individually with my group of players over the summer. You know, I asked him if that's okay with him, you know, etc., etc. He was completely fine with it. So I started sort of doing one-to-one sessions internally, and I think I started off with, let's have a look here to get you the exact number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 players. So I had 7 players that I was working with at the very, very beginning, on a one-to-one basis. And we were just doing sessions once or twice a week, depending on obviously what the parents wanted and their preferred way of doing things. And then that sort of scaled up as we went along. And I know you'll have some questions probably, and we'll go through it in more detail. But the very beginning of it was literally me just wanting to work more on a one-to-one basis with my group of players already.
Okay, good. So you're coming from a club environment, right? I think the first bit that you did is really important, and that's something that a lot of coaches that want to get clients could do, is look at the network that you have and reach out to that network if they're interested. So in your case, it was you're a club coach, and you've got good connections and good relationship with the owner, which is obviously helpful. And also you've got parents that already like you, they trust you, and they're looking for what you're offering. Okay. So now, coach in a similar position, I guess that would be the first step to getting your first clients, right? It'd be like, right, what's my network? Who can I reach out to? How can I build that way?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So we talked now a bit about how to get the client. So what was then the approach to
Mhm.
parents? How did you approach parents? How did you communicate what you were offering to them?
Yeah, so once it sort of initially kicked off, and I was working, like I said, internally with my group of players, and obviously the parents already knew me, so it's quite easy to just have, conversations at training sessions, both with the players, with the parents, or over WhatsApp, stuff like this. And then I started getting more messages from parents in general about running these sessions. So what I did then is, and again, this is where I was quite lucky. So in terms of the logistical side of things, so I was running these one-to-one sessions twice a week.
Mm-hmm.
So Saturday I was doing them in the park, so there was no cost associated with it.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is during the summer, so the weather's not a problem. So we were able to run sessions in the park. Um, and I'd be there from as early as 9 a.m. Well, earlier than 9 a.m. because I'd have to set up everything. Sometimes I'd have 5, 6, 7 one-to-one sessions back to back, so I'd literally be there almost the whole day
Yeah.
from 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. And that was a lot of my Saturdays were like that. Then the other good thing that I had is we had a little development center at SH Football on a Tuesday
Mm-hmm.
that we were running for players that were just below the level to get into our sort of elite junior Premier League squad.
Yeah.
And we had a group of 17 players, or just under 20 players, something like that, that were at the development centre. And we were training there on a booked out Astro pitch from 5:30 till 6:30, essentially, for that 1 hour block.
Mm-hmm.
Now, another good thing that worked for me in terms of the logistics is we were doing our trainings at the same, because it was a school site, and it was the same school site where I was completing my teacher training.
Nice.
So I've already been there for a period of, I don't know, 10 months before we even kicked off our development centre there.
Yeah.
So I knew obviously everyone from the facilities team to the PE team to equipment to, all of this stuff. And they were quite flexible in terms of our bookings.
Mm-hmm.
And we were always allowed on the pitch early in terms of setup, stuff like this, etc., etc. So what I started then doing is I started running one-to-one sessions both before and after the development center because the timings essentially allowed for that. So what I started doing is we'd have from sort of 5 p.m. No, that's wrong. Actually, from 4:45 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
till 5:30 p.m. I'd have a one-to-one session going on, and I did 45-minute sessions, by the way.
Yeah.
And then from 5:30 till 6:30, we obviously had our development center going on. And then from 6:30 till 7:15, I would have my second one-to-one session going on. So I would be there for a total of 3 hours on a Tuesday, and then sort of 5, 6, 7 hours on a Saturday. So I'd probably be doing this for about 10 hours a week, sort of part time.
Mm-hmm.
And it just grew from that. So obviously the interest grew from the players that were in the development center.
Yeah.
A lot of the parents wanted extra trainings to sort of push them over the summer to get into the JPL squad come September. And they would turn up and see that I'm doing a one-to-one session before the group session, and then I'm doing another one-to-one session after. So a lot of parents would, directly come over to me and just ask if they can be included in future ones. And it got to a point where it really scaled up. So, like I said before, it started on 7 players,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember I ended the summer business, and I was on 21 clients.
Wow.
So we went up times 3 in a period of sort of. I did this throughout the month of July and August. I sort of started it in June, and that was just a sort of launch and advertising of it and getting the logistics and details laid out. And then we launched in July, and I just literally just ran it for them 2 months, and we ended up getting 21 players in.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is where I say majority of them came from SH Football Academy, and that's why the partnership between us worked really well.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were internally, like I said, 7 of them, but the other 14 players were from different age groups, so within our club. And I also had a few players, not as many, but if I just look at my list, 4 players out of them 21 were external, so they weren't from SH Football Academy at all. They were from other sort of grassroots clubs in the area. And that's sort of how it was, and that's sort of how it scaled up. And what I started doing then, and I know it's something that you touch on, Leo, as well, and how you tell people in terms of their businesses that start one-to-one, but then to try and scale up into small group sessions, because then you're getting double the money and less hours of your time, essentially. So what we started doing then is I started inviting the players that were in similar age gaps and similar development stages to train collectively in small groups. Now, again, what that allows is it saves me time because instead of running, 5 one-to-one sessions, I'm able to do that maybe within 2 small groups.
Yeah.
So it saves me time. You're obviously getting now more per hour because all of those players are coming in at the same time. So that's what I started doing. That's how it sort of scaled up from one-to-one to small groups. And the small groups, I think it started, I had sort of 3 or 4 players working together. And then as the program kept growing, eventually we had, small groups of 6 to 8 players. And I was able to sort of advertise them as a little bit more tactical sessions, preparing for the season in advance. One of the big things I then did, and this was in fact the very final thing that I did, the last day of sort of me running the business was a Saturday, 30th of August. And what I did is that whole group of 21 players that we had, because I knew them all very well and they were all very, very similar in terms of ability level players.
Yeah.
I invited them all and we set up basically a tournament day for everyone.
Yeah.
So I organized a sort of massive tournament day for everyone. Hour and a half was the duration of it. 16 out of those 21 players ended up attending, and we just had basically a massive tournament to end the summer. Now that's obviously big from a business perspective because then you're making what you'd normally make in a one-to-one. You're now making times 16 because you've got 16 players in attendance.
Yeah.
And we can touch on a little bit later if you want the sort of prices and the business logistics of it. But from the actual logistical side, organization side, and coaching side, that's how it sort of started and how it sort of scaled up eventually to 21 clients by the end of summer.
Good. So something that you've mentioned already, and a lot of coaches I work with, they really struggle is because you had a core focus with your program, right? You knew the players, you knew what they needed. So it's a lot easier to sell because you know those players. Now, a lot of coaches entering this type of industry where they get stuck is because there's so many coaches doing this, they just kind of fit into everyone else. It's like, oh, I do private training. But everyone does private training. So having a core focus of what exactly you do, I feel is really important. So because you separate yourself from other trainers who are doing this. So talk to us a little bit about the importance of that in having that core focus, having that's niche, and how that essentially separates you from other coaches.
Yeah, so for me, it was roughly, like you said, I knew the sort of majority of those players. I knew the 7 in great detail. Yeah. So in terms of planning sessions for them was really simple because I knew their level and what they needed to improve on. And then I had players, some of them were from our development center. So I had a brief understanding of what they need to do to push on to reach our elite junior Premier League squads. And then I had some players that I didn't know anything about. Yeah. If I just look at my list, probably 7, 8 players that I didn't know much about from that 21 list because they were either from a completely different age group at our club that I don't have much to do with. Yeah. At the time, I was also head of foundation phase at the club. So I knew our players, let's say by name, and I knew a little bit about them from speaking with their coaches and stuff. And that gave me obviously a wider access to the parents knowing me, and stuff like this. But in terms of, in great detail, knowing what this player exactly needs, I didn't know. So there was 3 ways that I sort of went about that. The first one was to have open dialogue with the parents because I don't know much about the players, but the parents do, and they're booking a private training, one-to-one training for a reason. I think sometimes we sort of not neglect, but we push the parents to the side. And actually, if you have a good, positive communication with them, they're not going to cause you problems. So I think sometimes coaches think that all parents cause problems. Well, ultimately, they want their kid to get better. That's why they're there in the first place. That's why they're paying money for it. Yeah. So they're not going to cause a problem unless there's a reason to cause a problem. Besides maybe the small 5% that just moan and always cause a problem anyway. But if you find the right group, that won't happen. Yeah. So for me, it was speaking with the parents and what they want in terms of where they think their child's at. Speaking with the club coach, so the coach of their age group was another thing. If you know them or if you know what club they play for, you can have them conversations. And then the third thing is based on that, and I'd do the sort of initial trial session with them, and I'd be able to assess within that first hour roughly, what they're good at and where they need to improve. So that's how I sort of went about it in terms of, like you mentioned, making sure the trainings are individualized and the players are improving what they specifically need.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So when it comes to offering value, so obviously you've got a good connection with Simon, who is the club owner.
Mm.
Now, coaches that are in a similar position but may not have that close relationship, but they want to go down sort of the route that you went down. How can they approach the club owner, the director, to say, right, I want to offer more value to the club and the players, at the same time build a business? How can they do that?
I think a lot of clubs are open to that,
Yeah.
especially during like in the UK summer season. So it's just sending emails or clubs you've maybe coached at previously and stuff like this, and going up to them and just having them open and honest conversations. I think it's not going to be smooth sailing for everyone because every owner is different, every person is different. For the reason it worked so well with me and Simon is because we're two people. Okay, Simon's a business owner of SH Football Academy, and I was a business owner at the time of my one-to-one coaching company. But both of us are the two types of people that focused more on the value that we can give to players rather than the business side of things in terms of how much money can we get out of this. That was the second focus, not the first. And that's why it worked so well for us, is because Simon never asked me for a single penny from this. Now, he could have. He could have said, right, I'm giving you open access to my pool of players.
Yeah.
I want 20%.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like that. And with some ownerships, you might get that. And they're perfectly right to ask for that. I'm not saying that's wrong. But with me and Simon, because we had that, not even just that we had a close relationship, but in general, the type of people that we are, it was never about trying to make a huge amount of money off this. It was genuinely about how can we improve the standard of players. And in turn out, then we improve the standard of his club, which generates more money in the future. And we improve the standard of my business, where it grows from 7 to 21 players, which then naturally gives you more money anyway.
Yeah.
So that was sort of our approach, but it's going to be different. It's going to be different with everyone. The second thing, like I said, that I had quite good is the facilities. So I had an Astro pitch for 3 hours on a Tuesday that I didn't have to pay a single penny for.
Yeah.
Because the development center cost was covered by the club anyway, because they were organizing the development center. I was just running it. And then the sort of 45-minute block that I had before and after, technically I wasn't allowed to be on there. So if anyone from the school is watching and want to sue me, maybe I'm in trouble now. But because I had such a good relationship with everyone and everyone knew who I am, there wasn't any sort of issues from a safeguarding perspective. Like, oh, who's this person on the pitch? And everyone knows who I am because I'd be at that school from 9 a.m. until 3:30 p.m. And then I'm on the pitch. So no one ever had a problem. Do you know what I mean? So it's honestly, and this is the big thing, like we say this in football all the time, it's who you know sometimes, not what you know. If you can build those connections, everything's easier for you. Player recruitment, facilities. How many, for example, the company that I work for, Pro Football Academy, they have a massive partnership with Goals and Power Leagues in the UK. They pay a discounted rate for the pitches. If you can really build those connections, everything becomes easier for you. So that's what I'd say. So to go back directly, black and white, to your question, how can people make these connections? How can they reach out? Just send an email. Or go to your local pitch venue, have a conversation. And I'm sure they'll be open to certain negotiations that will help both you and them.
Yeah, 100%. And you're right in saying that every owner is going to be different. And every owner is going to have their own sort of, as you said, maybe they take a percentage, or in your case, maybe not. But as well, it also comes down to, in those type of moments, how important you are to them and how much value they see in you. Because if in your case, for example, the owner of your club saw a lot of value in what you do. Other coaches, maybe the approach is a little bit different. The owner's like, okay, he's only been here not long enough, but he's a good coach, but there might be a percentage there. So yeah, I think every situation is going to be different. But definitely, even before the build up to that, try to do things within the club to show that you are some type of valuable person to them, so that when it comes to a situation like that where you want to start a business or you want to run sessions, then you're in a much better position when it comes to negotiation.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree with that. Yeah.
All right, so let's touch on the last point, which is pricing. Okay, so pricing, so many coaches send me messages, Leo, what should I be charging? Right, I always say to them, your pricing isn't going to be perfect at the beginning,
Hmm.
but then over time, there's going to be certain things that over time you realize, do you know what? I'm charging too little for this. Or maybe I'm charging too much, and that's why I'm not getting people through the door. So talk to
Yeah.
us about your experience with pricing, talking to pricing about to parents and so
Hmm. Yeah. So, well, I think I'm sort of a person that can speak quite openly about this. Probably, if you look at my pricing that I'll touch with you here, from a business perspective, I failed massively. But from a coaching perspective, in terms of delivering what I actually wanted to do, I
on.
succeeded
Yeah,
because I ended up with 21 players within a period of 1 or 2 months. You don't get that if you're not providing some sort of good service. So for me, like I covered earlier, the whole thing started because I wanted to work individually with my players. So it was never about the sort of money side of things for me. Now I look at a lot of these one-to-one coaches, and I work with some of them in different coaching environments. And they charge like £75 per hour for a one-to-one session, or £80 per hour.
yeah,
That was never me.
yeah.
And look, maybe it would have worked. Maybe I would have still had 21 players and I would have made, quadruple the money. Maybe. I don't know. But however, I think the sort of where I was at, the parents are paying a lot of money already to be at the club.
Mhm.
They're paying a lot of money for all the other stuff that they do. So in terms of my pricing, the way that I had it, there was a set sort of price, but it differed slightly. So I'll give you an example. For example, I had it was a brother and a sister that were training with me.
Yeah,
So they're siblings. So I'm not going to charge them both double now,
yeah,
like I would if it was two separate players, if you know what I mean.
yeah,
So I essentially charged them two would train together for the price of one.
yeah,
And my price there was I sort of started it because I didn't have to pay for any of the pitches even on the Tuesday.
yeah,
I had no sort of booking cost. I had no equipment costs. There
yeah,
wasn't anything really coming out. So
yeah.
everything coming in was always going to be pure 100% profit
Perfect.
um, for my time. So I was charging initially £20 an hour,
Hmm.
and this was for the players that I had known and that I was working with before.
Yeah,
So I charged them £20 an hour,
yeah.
but I do things also at a block booking thing. So essentially, if the players booked with me, for example, 5 training sessions for
Hmm.
£20 an hour, that's £100, and
Yeah,
they'd have 5 sessions. So what I do is instead of just doing session by session, I'd prefer to have things in blocks so that I have it on my calendar. I know this date and this time I'm here, and it's all set and ready, and I can sort of sell out all of my times and my availability in a week ahead of time, which
hmm,
makes it easier for me rather than sort of going week to week and changing things and organizing things. So what I do is if you book a block of, for example, 5 training sessions,
yeah,
instead of paying 100, it's going to be £75. So you're
yeah.
basically getting a session free, if
Hmm.
that makes sense. Now, that works for the three. That works for three people. It works for the parents because they're getting a cheaper rate. It works for me because I get to sell things in advance and I get to book all of that. And
Yeah,
it works for time for both people because everyone has a set list of what time, what place, etc. So that's how I sort of did it. Um, then I moved the price up to £25 per hour for players that were coming into my program that I hadn't worked with in the past, so players that I didn't know.
yeah,
So I was priced at 25 an hour. And that was again for sort of 5 sessions, you would pay £125. I just did it for £100.
yeah,
So again, it's they sort of get like a little session free. Um, which I would have done anyway because they'd have a trial session sometimes, depending on if it's someone that I knew, they wouldn't need a trial session because they already know me. If
hmm,
it's a player that I don't know at all, I'd probably offer a trial session so that they can see if
yeah,
this is what they're looking for.
yeah,
Um, and then as the program kept sort of scaling up and I kept getting more and more messages, like I said, eventually I was completely sold out in terms of all of my Tuesdays, of which I only had a 3 hour block, so I could only do 3 sessions per Tuesday. So
nice.
that's 12 sessions in a month. that I could do on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
And then a Saturday was technically unlimited. I could be there from 9 a.m. until whatever time in the day.
Yeah.
And that was always usually sold out. Like I say, I'd have sort of 5, 6, 7 training sessions on the go until I flipped it into the sort of small group model where I'd only have sort of 2 or 3 sessions on the go rather than 7. And that opened up sort of the ability to do small groups with the ones that agreed to it, and then still have one-to-ones for some of the new ones. And it again saves me time and money. So for the small groups, what I was charging initially, and it was depending on the size of the group. So if I had more players training, I'd charge slightly less because I'm making more money anyway. And I just felt if you're charging 25 pounds for a one-to-one session where the training's very individualized, I can't charge more for a small group session because what's the excuse? There isn't one. There isn't one because it's now no longer individualized. So it was always going to be less. So I'd be charging, for example, £15 for the group sessions if I had sort of 3 to 4 players. And that works fine for me because I'm still making what I'd make in 2 or 3 hours. I'm now making in 1 hour. And then I remember for my tournament night when I invited everyone, I only charged them £10 per player.
Nice.
And the plan there was with 21 player, it was to make £210 in 1 hour.
Yeah.
Now that's a very, very high rate for an hour.
Yeah.
So it was never about the sort of, like I say, finances for me. And the sort of program in itself, I sort of ran it, like I say, in July and August, and I made just under £1,000 in total for probably about 7 weeks of work.
Yeah. Okay, good. Perfect. I like some of the examples you gave there. And I always say this to coaches, when we talk about pricing, you just have to look at your expenses, you have to look at the location you're at, and then how is your, look at your program as well. Is it £100 per session program, or is it a £15 per session program? Yeah. Because sometimes I speak with coaches and they're like, I ask them, right, what do you charge? And they're like, 75 per session. Okay, how many sessions do you do a month? 1. And it's like, it's a one-off session, really.
But
in your case, you were selling a block, and you were selling consecutive training sessions, which was good. And it's a really good building block, which I like, and gives coaches in the UK especially an idea of different formats they can use, especially with one-to-one, because you talked about not charging more for groups than one-to-one, which is, I completely agree. And then you gave coaches a bit of an idea with your tournament, how to make that little bit extra as well, which I really liked. So as we start to wrap up, Phil, we'll do some more videos on these type of topics. So we'll do like a series. But can you just give us your last thoughts on anything that we've kind of mentioned today, and more specific to UK football coaches?
Yeah, I think I agree with all the points that you said as well. If you're charging a lot of money for one-to-one sessions, like you said, £75, but you're only delivering 1 or 2 or 3 a month, your profit margins can be much higher if you charge less, but you can build a consistent and constant client base, because then you're actually making more for your time. The illusion is £75 for an hour looks really good on paper, and sort of 2025 doesn't. But if you do that 2025, but I'm delivering 24 sessions a month, and because like I said, 12 on my Tuesday and 12 on my Saturdays, and you're delivering 5 a month, I'm actually making more money. So although it looks nice on paper, oh, you're getting so much money just for this 1 hour of work, it is just a one-off, like you mentioned. So it's really important. The key points that I'd say, just to sort of conclude, is really important to build a consistent client base and scale up. So I started with just 7 players, and then it went up, and like I say, the program finished with 21 players at the end of summer. And then I saw one of your last videos where you touched upon how to open or how to transition from a business into a sort of soccer academy. And you mentioned the sort of selling points and how can you make yours stand out. So something like I did, the tournament night. Now it works really well for 2 reasons. You have the ability to showcase all of your players.
Yeah.
And you can invite scouts and you can invite other club coaches and stuff. Secondly, because I did it at the sort of right at the back end of summer, everyone who's not away on holiday and stuff, they get like a good football experience.
Yeah.
Thirdly, really it works really well for your business because, like I said, I was just charging £10 per player. But
Yeah.
if I had everyone turn up, that's £200 that I'm getting for 1 hour of work just to put on a tournament. That's a lot of money that
Yeah.
you're getting for just that 1 hour. So it makes complete sense from all of those perspectives. And then you're likely to scale up. The other thing that I'd say is stay in touch with players and parents that you've worked with previously, so
Yeah.
that when you do open or transition your business and have this, you can reach out to them if they'd like to join. So I had my group of 21 players. I'm just looking at my notes now, and I had one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, and I had another 10 players that I was preparing to contact their parents in terms of joining the program.
Mm-hmm.
And these are players that I've worked with for previously.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these players are ones that were interested but were away on holiday and couldn't commit to certain times and dates.
Yeah.
So, I had a real sort of forward thinking and a little bit more of a medium term plan as well, you could say, to my business,
Yeah.
where I wanted it to eventually scale up to 21 plus 10, 31 players.
Yeah.
And then I would have constantly been thinking, what can I do next? What can we implement next?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just make sure you have that sort of short-term and long-term vision. Make sure you're comfortable with what you're selling. Make sure you're offering, things like tournament days, things like scouting events, and just giving that little bit more to your program. And think, really, really carefully about, do you just want to deliver one-off sessions for high prices, or do you want to build a constant and big customer base of 20, 30 plus players that you can eventually transition into a soccer academy
Yeah.
rather than just a business, and then you're making even more money. So, there's lots of options in this, and all I'd say to finish is, make sure everyone watches all the videos that we're posting. Leo's stuff is really good on the business side of things. We cover a lot of the coaching side of things,
Mm-hmm.
and by the time you're watching this, our futsal video is out as well.
Yeah.
So we cover another aspect of what you can add into your program that's slightly different to others. So
Yeah.
there's loads of stuff in it. So it's a massive market that's just going to consistently grow, and there's opportunities there.
100%. 100%. Okay, Phil. Well, thanks again for jumping on. Thanks again for sharing, your experience, your knowledge. I know this video is going to be really valuable, especially, I mean, it's valuable for coaches all around the world, but coaches in the UK are going to be more appreciative of it because it's going to be more relatable to them. So great stuff. So thanks again. If you guys haven't yet and you're watching or listening, make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, description below, you can send them through as well. Okay. Phil, look forward to our next catch up.
See you guys later.
See you later.